Mr. Acting Chairman, I appreciate it.
I know you're going to ask a question on the Arctic. So
I am,
thought-
as a matter of fact.
Excellent.
You left it for me. Secretary Esper, first I want to thank you personally for the participation of the department in the National Cyber Solarium process. Over a year, we've worked very hard. Ken Rapuano and David Norquist made significant contributions in intellectual firepower and criticism and thoughtfulness, and I just want to thank you for your authorization for that participation. It was very meaningful.
Oh, thank you, Senator. I'm very encouraged by that, by all that, too. It's, there's a lot good coming out of it.
Well, we'll be releasing our report next Wednesday, as a matter of fact. And,
great.
And I think it's a good piece of work. And indeed, we've spent a whole session here and really haven't talked about cyber, which is an essential, that's not the right word, a very real domain of warfare today. And that's what we'll be talking about extensively next week. So I just wanted to thank
No,
you.
thanks. And we're in cyber competition, if not conflict, every single day.
Exactly. We're at war today.
Yes, sir.
General Milley, I guess this is a question for both of you. I'm very concerned about a gap in defense against hypersonic weapons. Both of our principal adversaries, China and Russia, have developed these weapons, have actually deployed them, and this puts at risk particularly our naval resources. Talk to me about what we're doing to counter that threat.
Senator, as part of our hypersonics research, we are putting money into defensive systems. One of the early things that we know we need that money is going directly into is a low Earth orbit missile tracking system, if you will, that would be able to track hypersonic systems moving through the atmosphere or...
Because one of the problems with hypersonics is they don't leave a radar signal. They move so fast they create a plasma shield, so we need the tracking.
You need a low, we've determined that you need a LEO tracking system to do that. So that's one of the priorities of our R&E efforts to do that. And then, of course, you have to figure out the effectors by which you would knock one out of the sky, if you want, or a variety of things that we're exploring. But it is critical to have that defense because it is such, the maneuverability, the speed, the effectiveness of these systems is remarkable.
Two things,
sir.
Senator King, on that. One, on the defense, if you can be seen, you can be hit. And there is no defense against hypersonic. It goes 5 to 10 times speed of sound. You're not going to defend against it. So what you have to do is be invisible. And there's all kinds of techniques and procedures that we're working on in order to make our forces very difficult to see from an acquisition standpoint of enemy radar. So that's on the defense. On the other part, you're not going to shoot the arrow. Those things going so fast, you're not going to get it.
Right.
You got to shoot the archer. You got to go deep downtown, and you got to get on the offense. If you want to defeat hypersonics, you got to go to the source, the launch pads,
And you
the
have to have
firing
the
units.
ISR in order
That's
to know
right. You
where
got to have the ISR to get in there. And if you're launching hypersonics at the United States, then you're going to war with the United States, and you're going to pour it on with mass and firepower and fast and hard.
But I thought you made an important point earlier in the hearing where you talked about ISR. We've sort of had a vacation on ISR.
That's right.
Because we've been acting against enemies that
right.
don't have any air capacity. It's a whole different ballgame when we're talking about peer state competitors.
That's right. And you want to invest in ISR that can penetrate
Right.
the airspace of these great power competitors.
It's also why we talk, as I've laid out the shipbuilding principles, if you will, going forward, is and the Navy agrees with this, is a move away from very large platforms into smaller platforms, a more distributed force, so that you complicate the enemy's plans, particularly with regard to the employment of hypersonics.
Well, you raised shipbuilding. We talk about the Indo-Pacific as being the most important region. We talk about the national defense strategy, and yet the budget talks about knocking out 4 destroyers and I think an amphib in the future plan. How was that decision made? How firm is it? Can we revisit it? I want to get a little bit of thoughts on that. By the way, the other thought is, we're doing this recapitalization out of operating costs. In any other organization, you'd have a capital budget, and you're building 40-year an asset. A Columbia submarine is a 40-year asset, and yet we're building them out of cash flow instead of some kind of long-range attributed to the cost over the life of the object. To get back, talk to me about
Yes, sir.
the shipbuilding.
Well, as I said earlier, I think we need, to me, I don't focus as much on the number, but that number 355 is out there. I think we need to have a fleet larger than 355. My gut tells me that. I'm convinced of that.
Senator Perdue had a chart this morning at the Sea Power Subcommittee that if you saw it, that it shows what China's doing, you'd feel vindicated.
Yes, sir. But we do have a qualitative capability over them. There's some other things out there.
Sure.
But nonetheless, if it's not just capability and lethality, it's presence. You have to have the presence. And so I do think we need to get on that path. I think there are a number of things that we need to do. First of all, I completely support what the CNO did. The CNO decided to reallocate $4 billion or so out of SCN and put it into O&M to get readiness up. We have a readiness challenge. It's been well
The
documented.
ship's no good if it's in the dock.
Yes, sir. And you know, I think the GAO said last year in 2019, due to maintenance challenges, the equivalent of 19 ships didn't go to sea. And so we got to fix the readiness challenge and then put more money into shipbuilding. If we can get the legislative approval changed, Secretary Mobley's digging in deep. He's doing what the Army and Air Force did to find $40 billion over 5 years. That'll free up a good chunk of what they think they need. And then we got to get this higher top line moving in the right direction.
Well, but we also have to, I mean, what worries me about what you're talking about, and I'm sorry, I know I'm over time, but I worry about you can't turn the industrial base off and on with a switch. And if we drive it down and you have a loss of personnel, loss of welders, loss of skilled shipbuilders in Bath, Maine, or Pascagoula, or Marinette, Wisconsin, you can't turn them back on.
Completely agree, Senator. That's why I think we need to look more, particularly with large capital investments like ships, multi-year, and even I think the Navy we discussed yesterday is can you multi-year O&M so that you don't have the same perturbations in your maintenance cycle,
Right.
because you can't afford to go, take a ship out of maintenance and then have a month or 2 month gap. And I know they're struggling with this up in Groton right now with the with the maintenance up there. So you got to figure out a way to smooth that out so workers will be incentivized to stay in the trade.
Are you suggesting that consistent funding from Congress might be a benefit? I'm shocked.
Consistent and timely.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.